Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. I'm Langdon DeMint.
And I'm Julian Taylor.
And welcome to our podcast.
Hello and welcome to Two Bald Guys and a not so bald lady talking safety. My name's Julian Taylor. I'm delighted to be back recording another podcast. I'm with my close and follically challenged buddy, Langdon. Welcome, Langdon.
Hey, Jules. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
You as well.
Our guest is Dee Arp. I'm really excited to introduce Dee. So, Dee, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And do you want to give a bit of an introduction as to who you are?
Sure, thank you. Really lovely to be here, and confirming I do have hair. I'm really pleased to be here and talking about psychological safety with the two of you. I'm Chief Quality Officer with NEBOSH, so my role involves looking after our portfolio of qualifications and assessments that sit within those qualifications. The predominantly health, safety, environmental wellbeing qualifications for profession across the globe. So we deliver those qualifications through a network of learning partners. We have more than 400, again, spread across the globe. And I also look after the reliability of the marking of those qualifications and all of our upward accreditation with our regulators.
Okay, I'm not being nasty here, Dee, but that could sound quite dry.
How dare you?
But what I was going to say was, I know there's far more to Dee Arp than making sure that marking is accurate. So tell us about sort of a bit about your background and your passions for safety.
Yeah, there is a passion for safety. So my background way back is in civil engineering. And I did an indenture program that covered road building, bridge design, traffic management, transportation, which brought me to road safety. And that's where the passion for safety started. So I was involved in the accident investigation and prevention team in Humberside, Jules, at Humberside County Council I was with then.
Yeah.
And that's where the real passion started, when you truly start to understand the impacts of an accident. And I think it's like the pebble in the pond. There's the initial impact on the person, and then their family, their friends, their organisation, society. It just keeps on going and going. So when I got to the end of my indenture and chose a department to be in, it was the accident investigation and prevention team, where we were looking at changes to highway design, on how that could prevent road traffic accidents. As part of my training in that area, I got my first introduction to ROSPA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, and did a training course on road traffic accident investigation and prevention. Ended up with the honour of being invited back to lecture on that course. And then a role came at ROSPA as Road Safety Standards Manager. So this is many years ago, but I ended up then going to ROSPA, did 14 years with them. And in the course of that journey, there was a huge campaign going on at ROSPA to get occupational road risk recognised in the same context as other occupational risk. Because at that point, if you were driving for work, it wasn't really a reportable incident in the same context as other occupational accidents. So they then needed somebody with a road safety background to come into the occupational health and safety consultancy team. And that was my introduction to IOSH and NEBOSH and OSH. So like many OSH professionals, I think it was not a set route to do what I'm doing now. It was very, very wiggly. But I started doing my IOSH training, my NEBOSH training, absolutely loved it. That extended that whole passion for safety to people in workplaces. And that then has led to understanding that a person brings the whole self to work. So you're looking at their safety and well-being wherever they are. As part of my time with ROSPA, I became an examiner for NEBOSH. So you mentioned about the marking, that in itself is pretty boring, but in the context of people gaining a qualification, and this is absolutely my passion of the safety piece and the education piece, because it's absolutely amazing to give people a certificate and award them the parchment. But for me, it's the learning journey that's got them to that point. Excuse me. So it is very much, what I stand by and for with NEBOSH is that passion to give people the skills, the knowledge to go into the workplaces to truly make a difference.
The knowledge is great, but it's that practical application, isn't it, that is the critical piece.
It absolutely is. And we work really hard with our qualifications and the knowledge, but also to give the skills to do that practical implementation. So we try to be very vocational. And I hear so many organisations now, that they're committed to, and they're understanding the need for wellbeing initiatives and mental health, but they can't find the tangibles. They can't find people equipped with the actual tools to do something about it. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Jules. It's giving people the knowledge and the confidence and the competence to make that difference.
I'm curious, and I'm throwing a curveball here. I'm sorry, and it just hit me. So with your past being of the vehicular transportation side, seeing a lot of the incidents that occurred. So when I was doing risk services, that was every year vehicle incidents or that type of transportation over there. I'm not going to say it's leading, but it's one of the major in the states as far as incidents. And it seems like there is maybe a correlation or a lack of that, of when a worker or anyone, when they get behind the wheel, your work hat comes off, and it's your life hat. And it seems like whether it's more incidents, I mean, we have a lot around traffic incidents, and just whether it's speeding or fast acceleration, what promulgates that incident. What are you seeing, or have you seen, as far as a correlation with when someone gets behind the road, more incidents that we're seeing versus, and I'm trying to tie this to the overall psych safety, versus when you're in the workplace and when you're actually working behind, if you're in a warehouse or whatever the situation is. Does that make sense? Do you see that correlation as far as that? Yeah, everybody.
That training piece is really interesting around the driving, isn't it? Because you think of most organisations, if they're running fleets of trucks, for example, they will do driver training. That's a regular thing.
Yeah.
But actually, what they don't do is train the people who are driving the cars. And as you say, Dee, we pass our driving test in the UK at 17 years old. That might be the last training you ever have on driving a car. And the world changes, like you say, roads change, technology changes. It's quite amazing, and again, it's not something that a lot of businesses don't even sort of consider it as a risk, do they? Is that just that driving element?
Absolutely, and there's the problem. And then you look at some of the extremes of pressurized driving on our roads, or the delivery drivers. And by very nature, they're delivering a pizza and they're under pressure to get so many deliveries in the hour. They're under pressure to get there in one piece, hot. Yeah, incredible pressures. And it kind of flips your point, Langdon. For some drivers, they are getting behind the wheel or on that bike and they've got a work pressure in the head. Like you say, sometimes it's the opposite. People are getting in the vehicle to drive home and they're forgetting work. Sometimes they're bringing work into that vehicle and everything else that's going on in their head as well.
Well, no, that's a great point. A lot of the organizations we were working with at the time, excuse me, were human services. So in rural areas, they have vans. Maybe it was somebody with mental health or somewhere on the spectrum, or it was substance abuse. So they were picking them up, transferring, and they were having trouble even keeping people on the job because it was such a high stress job. And then we were taking telematics, so you would look at the hard braking, hard acceleration, the speeding, and a few other factors, and you think about that. When there was pressure, people were maybe yelling in the back, or they felt they had their own life issues, and then bringing it to work. And then how do you correlate with that, and trying to at least help them see that sometimes hard braking, that means that you probably were speeding, or you weren't paying attention, or there could have been a distraction that led to that. Excuse me. So it was just always trying to help paint that overall picture of why what you're doing matters for the next step, almost, and understanding what's around you. It seemed like that was a challenge. I was interested to see, because I think we talk so often of various principles, whether it's psych safety, human performance, but how can we actually integrate that better? And it seems like some of the things we're really trying to work on, because how can you integrate these to actually make true changes in the workplace?
I think you've hit the absolute crux of this. Jules, you spoke about my passion. The passion for me, and I know for you guys as well, is people. It's getting them home safe every day to their friends and family. Home safe, well, and happy. And for me, that is the golden thread. That's what joins everything, whether it's safety, whether it's occupational health, whether it's human capitals, whether it's sustainability, resilience, wherever we come at all of that from, it's all about the people in the organizations that are making that organization deliver what it's there to deliver. So, yeah, I think sometimes as professions, we overcomplicate things. We're looking for pockets to put things in. And I get why people need roles and accountabilities, but I think we can be better at joining those dots and bringing the professions together and understand this is all about looking after a person, and that person brings their whole self into the workplace and takes the whole self home again. And what we're all trying to achieve is to take the same person home that they came into the workplace with.
I think Chris Newsom, was it Chris Newsom, Langdon said fairly recently on a pod we recorded, he said people don't go to work looking to get injured, do they? And I thought that was a great quote as well, which is that sort of actually they don't. And I think to your point, Dee, I think you make a really good point, which is actually if we look after the whole person and we focus on the whole person, actually it's not just about safety, is it? It starts to be about productivity, it starts to be about quality, it starts to be about the whole package.
Oh, again, another really important point. And, I talk to so many OSH professionals that absolutely understand that. They absolutely understand if you look after people, they'll be healthy, they'll be happy, they'll be well, they'll engage more, they'll be more innovative. The organization has better efficiencies and performance, but they have a real job getting that across to leadership. They have a real job, and for the likes of us, it's so super simple. We're just like, why can you not see this? Because to us, it is so simple. But I think the art there is we've got to train the OSH profession to be able to speak the C-suite, the leader's language, and deliver the message in a different way. But there is huge hope. I was at a conference last week, and a CEO of a large organization stood up and explained the safety journey they'd been on. And she brought the absolute audience to pinpoint silence when she said, and I can't remember the words exactly, but it was something like, the numbers and the performance don't matter if I have to go to somebody's funeral.
Wow. Yeah.
It was just so powerful, and she teared up at it was so authentic, so genuine, and she absolutely understood the reverse of not seeing the whole person, and the reverse of not putting health and safety up there with finance and everything else that leaders have to manage.
Just out of interest, Dee, because that's a sort of, that's what we want to hear. Had that organisation had a fatality? Do you know?
They had in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the sad things is I've heard some great senior leaders talk, but they tend to get it after the fact, don't they?
Yeah.
When something has gone wrong, that's when it really brings it home, and it's how you get that message across beforehand, isn't it? And get people bought into it. Yeah.
Which is an issue. I think that's in general. How do you make things real if it hasn't truly affected you before?
Yep.
I mean, you can see it. It's kind of the sympathy versus empathy, so to speak, and that's tough. I think that's a challenge. I was on my background, D, getting into health and safety. My master's was in health and safety, industrial hygiene. So after I got my undergrad, I chose this as the role and took classes and then went on. And the people side, I mean, now it's been a few years, not a lot of years, but it's been a few years.
Not many.
Yeah, not many.
Not as many as me.
Jules, I wasn't going to say that. But there was no, honestly, the people side of EHS wasn't taught. And that is and I went to one of the top, I don't say that like great, but I went to one of the top occupational health and safety schools, continuing education universities, and that's just not an aspect of the program. And maybe it is now. I haven't looked in a few years, but that is so crucial, especially where we see now, we talk about incident rates are kind of going down. They've leveled. SIFs, serious fatalities, injuries, fatalities, they kind of go up and down, but people are what drive, it seems, or what's driving one way or the other. So how can we better tackle that? And it's tough.
It is. It is. And, one thing I always talk about, on these courses that we all do, you're taught all the principles and the structures and the formulas, and you read the guidance documents, and you know how to put in a good health and safety management system. And so many organizations have got great health and safety management systems, which, if they were implemented as we intended, would really be bringing down those incident and accident rates even more. But we put people into the equation, and we put lack of psychological safety into the equation, and we get a culture in an organization, and that's what dictates what actually happens. And the gap between what the health and safety management system is saying should be happening to look after everybody and what is actually happening because of behaviors and the culture, that gap in organizations can be small or it can be really wide. And we need to I think the challenge now is looking at and understanding that gap and asking, why is there a gap? Why is it when we've got this great system, why is it that people are not able to or not buying into what we're saying should be happening? So it's understanding the culture that we've got and then asking the whys and what do we need to do to change that.
And it kind of comes back to what you've touched on already, which is that leadership piece, doesn't it, Dee? Because ultimately, when you can't avoid the fact that when you talk about cultures, leadership and the way they behave and the things that they say and the things that they do will define the culture of the organization.
Absolutely. And it's got to be, again, it's another passion of mine, is that visible and authentic leadership.
Yeah.
Again, we see commitment in terms of a budget for health and safety. We see commitment in that there'll be the competent people. We'll maybe even get a lead on the board, but sometimes it's the simple things. It's the leaders getting out there and truly understanding what a day at work looks like for their people. Going out and engaging with people. And again, I'm really blessed. I do a lot of awards judging, and you see, the classic safety tour. And the leaders will have their schedules to go around and complete their safety tour. But it takes a real leader, I think, to make that authentic and truly engaging and to truly listen. And I use this example a lot from a good friend of mine, Karen Hewitt, which is so powerful. She talked about
We
COVID.
love Karen Hewitt.
Oh,
We
amazing.
love Karen.
Well, you might have heard Karen say this before, but she was talking about COVID and how all the checklists came out and how it was important to check in with people that were isolated. Absolutely. And the common question, or the number one, would be, are you okay?
Yep.
And maybe it's a British thing, but it's classic, isn't it? People will say, I'm fine. And Karen said, she talks to leaders and say, flip that and ask them to say, what do you need from me to be okay?
Yep. I like that. Really
yeah,
like that.
I love her
Yeah.
for many reasons, but that, I've quoted her so many places, just that, because sometimes leaders think it's all so complicated and they get the passionate OSH professional talking our OSH language and it all seems too much, but just some real tangibles like that. Another great program I saw when I was at the conference last year, an organization had introduced a program called about Be the Difference or Be the One. And then they've got all these great quotes from people right across the organization. I'm going to be the one too. The leaders were included in that. I'm going to be the one to listen to people and support people. But I'm absolutely right. Going back to the leaders, it's that authenticity. It's leading by example. It's allowing people to make the mistakes and create that non-judgmental, non-blame culture. And if a leader can absolutely own up to a mistake, and say, I made this mistake and I learned from it, it creates that open space for other people to do the same. So sometimes putting the emphasis not just on the outcomes of something, but, well, what did we learn from that? How can we all be better next time? That framing it in that way. And again, leaders that can show some vulnerability as well. We have some leaders in organizations stepping up and saying, I've got vulnerabilities. I went through this mental health challenge. And it can just create that understanding that we all have mental health in the same way that we all have physical health, and yet it's not seen that way in so many organizations.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 with Dee. We look forward to you coming again to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety for part 2 with Dee Arp. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you stream your podcast, or you can visit us at evotix.com.
And if you've liked today's podcast or you found some value from it, we'd really appreciate it if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review or a rating. It really means a lot to us. Thank you.